Welcome to the Trueface Podcast. I'm Robbie Engel, your host, and just a guy trying to figure out life. We've all read and learned about the peace and the freedom that Jesus makes possible, but we struggle to experience it. We get stuck in our relationships with God and others, and we wonder, is this really all there is to it? This conversation today is designed to help you take a step in trusting God and others to live more fully alive. So whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe, share, and join our growing community of Jesus followers at trueface.org. On this episode of the podcast, I am with the OG, the original guy, the original gangster, Bill Thrall. He is the co-founder, him and Bruce McNichol founded Trueface in 1995. We are entering the 30th year of this ministry, which is amazing. Bill founded, before Trueface, he started Open Door Fellowship, a church in Phoenix. He has been married to Grace for 62 years. He has 3 kids, 9 grandkids, 4 great-grandkids. Bill Thrall, welcome back to the podcast that you started years ago. How does it feel, man?
It feels great, Robbie. So good to see and be with you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun catching up before we start recording. And you obviously have had a massive impact on my life directly through your teaching, our friendship, all the stuff over the years. I remember I was having lunch at Ted's Montana Grill, and I got a call, and it was like, "Hi." I didn't know the number. It was a Phoenix area code, and I picked up, and I was just wrapping up lunch, and said, "Hi, Robbie. We haven't met, but this is Bill Thrall." And I was like, "Bill Thrall? What are you calling me for?" And you invited me into a cohort, and we spent 2 years together, and it was amazing. And you're still doing these cohorts at 85.
I am. I have 3 this next year. Well, this year coming in now. So 1 here in Phoenix and 2 in Montana.
That is awesome. You're doing a podcast. Y'all, I'm so excited. This guy does not seem to slow down at 85, which is an inspiration, but I'm really excited. Your podcast that you and our mutual buddy, Scott Boyd, just dropped and did together is called Living Influence. That is out now, y'all. So after this podcast, go check out some more Bill Thrall at Living Influence podcast. How has that been, jumping back in with Boyd? I've heard great things about it.
It's an interesting experience because as we do this, Robbie, I'm discovering how hard it is. I mean, this is like a whole new world for me. They transform our living room into a studio every other month as we do these podcasts together. But I'm really enjoying it and very, very thankful for the opportunity.
I was talking to Joellen about it because she was watching one of them, and we were talking, and she said it was just awesome. It was like getting the Bill that we had access to in the cohorts all those years together. It's just fun to capture that and share that with more people. So thanks for continuing to, steward your influence to teach us these truths.
I love doing it, and I think it's going to work for me. We're in a new era here, but I think it's going to work for us. We've got a plan, and we have this young producer who's really, really sharp. He actually knows what he's doing, and he's been telling us this is how we're going to do it, and we're kind of following his lead, and we'll see what the Lord does with all this. But it could be a new significant way for me to share. So I'm looking forward to it with great anticipation, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole topic, which we've talked a ton about stewarding influence and living influence and what is influence. And, if we're designed for relationships with God and others, influence is an interesting descriptor, dynamic. Unpack, what do you mean by influence? And then what are the key factors that kind of underpin what that means to you?
Yeah. Well, for many years, but especially in the last 3 years, Robbie, I've been really concentrating on influence. Literally, the effect we have on others. Just simply the effect we have on others. And whether that's their character, their capacity, their behavior, or they're maturing. It's like what is the effect that my life has on other people? And when I think, Robbie, of it, I put together a small construct, but it helps me to kind of think of it in a process. Um, for many years, we taught that the most significant uh, influence will come out of our person. And so what I begin with is just this. If that's true, if that's a truism, if our influence comes primarily out of our person, then I think the first thing we have to discover pretty deeply is, who am I? Who am I? I need to understand that the way I see myself has a profound effect on those I influence. And so when I do that, lots of times I get the opportunity to come alongside a leader where he or she may be in a process of transition. And one of the first questions I always ask is, who are you? Who are you? Describe yourself to me. And that is an interesting experience for a lot of people. And primarily what I'm searching for there is this. What is the foundation for the way I view me? What is the foundation for the way I view me? Is the way I view me primarily coming from the shame of my life, or from the God of my life? It's just I don't want to oversimplify it, but really, as a Christian, I really have only two options. I either see myself as God sees me, or I still see myself defined by my shame. In this process, Robbie, I have spent a lot of time trying to understand better than I ever have the profound effect on what I call sin management. Done an essay on it. It's part of my cohort teaching. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help Christians understand that if their theology is still teaching them that they are sinners, then shame will be the foundation for the way they see themselves. I just want to say that again. If their theology is still teaching them that they are sinners, then their shame will be the foundation for the way they see themselves. And there are these broad categories, but they're very real. When my shame defines me, I'm going to just give you a list of things that are true about me. When my shame defines me, I have fear, I blame, I hide, I struggle with trust, I struggle with self-worth, I struggle with a sense of significance, I become vulnerable to sin, I struggle with things like incompetence, and there's a long list. We know the list. What most of us aren't measuring, and this is why we're doing all this work on influence, in my opinion, what most of us are not measuring is if my fear is an expression of my shame, what is the influence of my fear on you?
Hmm.
What is the influence of my fear on you? If blame is the expression of my shame, then what is the influence of my blame upon you? I don't want to bore anybody, but I want to just read something to you. This is what I wrote. Fear. It's not just that I am afraid, but I am afraid because of an overwhelming awareness that I am not in control and life is not safe. If that's true, if that's a foundational reality of the way I see myself, what is my effect on you? Here's what I wrote. You will resent my need to control you. Unfortunately, you will learn from me that you will now need to be in control. You will learn from me that no one is safe, that although life is not fair, from me you will learn now that you also need to be afraid. That's a profound effect. And because, Robbie, you and I have spent a lot of time coming alongside people, so to speak, I know a lot of people who see themselves as I just defined that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who really fear is a major factor in their dynamic. And so as I think about influence, I'll come back to this basic point. As I think about influence, I want to be asking the question, who am I? Go ahead.
So let me reflect back. So the foundational component to our influence, which is how we affect others, is the key component to that influence. Again, how we affect others is who am I and how I see myself. And
Absolutely.
if I see myself through a theology that says I'm a sinner, then that is the foothold for shame. And shame, the byproduct of shame is you mentioned fear and blame and hiddenness. And if fear is the way I see myself through that lens of I'm a sinner and therefore I need to be more in control, I need to do these things, then tell me more the interconnectivity to if I'm a sinner, then shame has a foothold. How does that show up in fear, and how does that connect to instilling fear in others?
Thank you. It goes way, way back. It's the primary lesson. It goes all the way back to the garden when Adam and Eve sinned, and they experienced shame for the first time, and they were afraid. They were afraid. It isn't like I get up next Tuesday morning and decide next Tuesday morning I'm going to be a person who's afraid. Mm-hmm. No, it's not that. Shame actually causes me to be afraid. Mm-hmm. And so I now have fear that is something that I realize, as I just wrote, I have fear because I've realized something. I am not in control. And back to the garden scene, the whole idea of when God confronted them, they blamed. And when God showed up, they hid. And they didn't any longer trust God. I mean, those first 4 words I wrote there are just out of Genesis chapter 3. And so what happens is this. I'm trying to help people, myself and others, understand, there are characteristics about your life that are the result of the way you see yourself. And those characteristics are having a profound effect on other people. Mm. And sometimes I'm watching people's eyes go, oh my gosh, I'd not thought about that. You mean my fear is affecting my children? Well, welcome to reality. See, my lack of competence, is that affecting my fear of this? It's all of it's connected. So that as we think about this whole idea of influence, I want to come back into the reality of my world and say, wait a minute. What if I see myself in this way? Have I ever measured the effect I'm having on you? And most of us realize growing up that people, parents and others, have profoundly affected us, but we never understood why. Mm. We never understood why. And you've done a lot of counseling. You know the reality. Well, I don't want to blame my mother. I don't want to blame my dad. I'm not asking you to blame anybody. I'm just asking you to get in touch with your reality. How do you see yourself? And then Robbie, the counterpart to that is equally important, and that is, what if by God's grace, as a believer, I could see myself as God sees me? That's the message of Trueface. We've been preaching this message for 30 years. Who does God say I am? Can I live into the reality of who God says I am? And can I, in that, experience things like love and repentance and trust and worth? And how in the world, one of the things I wrote down, Robbie, is this. Do I realize that when I see myself as God sees me, the focus of my life turns from me to you? What?
Tell me more about that.
In other words, Shame will always keep me preoccupied with me at your expense. Grace will cause me through love to be preoccupied with you. They're simple words, but there are tons and tons of theology behind them. Jesus said the great evidence that we belong to him is our love for each other. That's it. Sin management people would love those verses to read this. The world will know you're my disciples because you sin less than they do. That ain't truth. That is not anywhere near the theology of Jesus.
Yeah.
His theology was this: love always turns the attention of my heart from me to you. A theology that keeps me trapped in my shame also keeps me trapped in myself. And I am always the focus of my life. And so that when I am able to understand this profound grace of God, I experience the love of God. And in experiencing the love of God, I become a lover of others. And even maybe as equally important, I become one that is not only a lover of others, I become one who allows others to love me. It's a kind of a tease of words, but just because I have lots of experience with people, most of us have found it's much easier to love than it is to be loved.
Yep.
Most of us want to be the lover, but all of us have to learn to become the lovee as well. So when I look at this list of these contrasts of truths about me, you see, when I see myself as God sees me, I learn to become vulnerable to others. When I see myself as God sees me, I let others meet my needs. When I see myself as God sees me, I live in the world of expectations being expressed and realized. I'm coming alongside a couple right now, and we're struggling because, are they struggling with hearing the expectations they have of each other. They just, honestly, I have to be in the room with them when they do it because they can't do it without my presence because it's so hard for them. And Robbie, that may sound like a silly thing and it may sound off in left field. Let me tell you, my experience is screaming at me that most people never get to live in a relationship where their expectations are expressed. You know what we do? We live in relationships where we are constantly reacting to each other. Do you know that when I react to you, Robbie, my reaction is the expression of an expectation not being met? And in a relationship, when I react to you, then you react to the fact that I reacted to you. And then I react to the fact that you react to the fact that I reacted to you. And that's called an argument.
That's
and
right.
Most of us are deeply into an argument before we even know the expectation that wasn't met that triggered the whole silly thing.
How give me an example of what those, as we were talking earlier, I'm about to leave tomorrow for a trip with Emily, 20-year anniversary,
Yes.
42 more to go to hit your mark. But like, what does that look like to communicate our expectations to each other?
Yeah. Well, I think, Robbie, it's just this. Let's begin with this reality. We all have them. Everybody has it. They're like feelings. Our expectations are not in and of themselves wrong. They're just mine.
Yep.
But if I'm in a relationship where I don't get to express my expectations, I'll never know if they're right or not.
Yeah.
And I'll never have a balance in my what I'll do is in my fear of we don't mean this, but it's just what happens. In my fear of stating my expectations, guess what I do? I rob you of me. I rob you of me. I have expectations. You're my friend, Robbie. I have expectations in our relationship. I really do. I really do. I expect you to honor me. I want to honor you. I expect us to trust each other. I expect us to process when we don't trust each other. I actually expect us to continue to love each other, to depend on each other. I mean, those kind of things need to be expressed. They don't weaken, they actually strengthen a relationship. So one of the gifts you and Emily can give each other on this little time you're away is it's just the freedom to say, could we take the time to discover some new things about each other, expressed in our expectations? What is the expectation we have? I love to use that word we. I love to put the we in there.
Mm.
What are the expectations we have for our future together? What are the expectations we have for each other? Not what are my expectations of you, but what are the expectations that we have? And that to me is an interesting dynamic. Part of my life story, Robbie, is I grew up in a family where we never really talked about anything of significance. And there was never an awareness of me as a child, of the expectations my parents might have had of me. Unfortunately, as I'll get into this material with you later, unfortunately, one of the things that happens as we're growing up, if we don't grow up in a healthy environment, we always miss who we really are. Children who grow up in a hurtful, painful environment lose the reality of who they are. And so as I think about this dynamic of influence, and I rattled off those words to you, I think that all of those are critical to a healthy relationship with others. So that even going back a step, just to that, when I said to you that reality of, when I'm living out of who God says I am in a relationship with someone else who's living out of who God says they are, we are doing something. We're experiencing love. And you know what love does? Love heals.
Mm.
Love heals. Because guess what happens? Our needs are being met. And when our needs are being met, we're getting healthy. Healthy people are people who are loved well. Just imagine the wisdom of Jesus. Just in a simple one-liner, the wisdom of Jesus, your love for one another, because he knew that being loved well would make us healthy. I know this sounds upside down and backwards. I don't mean it that way. But working on our sin will never make us healthy.
Yeah.
Never. It'll never make us healthy. And the church, the majority of the church by far, is preaching a message to work on your sin. They're not preaching a message to learn to be loved. And so as I think about influence, my emphasis is this. Imagine in a community of two, and maybe more, we are making an assumption together that our expectation is that we will live in a we relationship, living into with each other who God says we are.
So I love how you say that that healthy people and a key part of maturing and growing in health is growing in the ability to be loved well. And even how you say that, it gets to the source of my limitation, that it's harder for me to receive love than to give
Right.
love. And
Right.
the interconnectivity of receiving love from God and letting others love me, because that is the mystery of this gospel of grace is the spring, the source of love that we get to receive from the Father that's never ending. So practically, like, I know the truth that God's love for me as the source is the never-ending spring of abundance, of which learning to receive that love is critical to my growth. On a daily basis, what does that look like for me? Like, how do I receive God's love? How do you receive God's love on a daily basis? Because that feels like the source you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it is, Robbie, and I'm going to give you kind of a three-pronged or four-pronged answer in this way. I think it's really important that we understand the God who loves us created us with needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I experience this love when I'm letting my God meet my needs. When I'm openly communicating to my God that today I am afraid. Love me, Lord. When I'm openly communicating to my God, God, I'm going into 3 really important meetings. I don't know what I'm doing. Guide me, Holy Spirit. Teach me truth. In other words, when I let my God into my reality is when I experience his love. Uh, One of the lessons we've learned over the years is that if my theology doesn't touch my reality, it's because I'm not experiencing grace. Grace will always touch my reality. So what if I as a man could trust my God with my reality, knowing that he loves me, that his promise is that he will meet my needs in my reality. And then I say it's 3 or 4 pronged because guess what he does? He actually gives me you, whoever the you is. We are intentionally given of God to each other. We are intentionally given of God to each other to be sources of his love for each other's benefit. I just love to think that way. How am I experiencing God's love when I let you, Robbie, love me? How am I experiencing love when I let my wife love me? How am I experiencing love when I'm letting those that God has given to me because of his love me? And so I'm in relationship with others. I know it gets twisted by people. I've been with people and they say only God can meet our needs. And I'll go, I know, isn't that wonderful? But you ever thought about the fact that one of the reason way he does it is through others? And they'll look at me like, what? Well, that's what he does. If I'm to love you as Jesus loved you, am I to love you as Jesus loves me? There's a whole bunch of God in all of this. It's like um, it's oversimplifying it, but I don't want to do that. It's like this. The Christian faith is a relational faith between God and others. And one of the great commentary dynamics of this is this. The way I treat you may be the greatest evidence of my relationship with God. What if that were true? What if the way I treat you was the greatest evidence of my relationship with God? Going back to this tragic reality of Christians still being taught they're sinners and their shame still defines them and they're self-centered and they're afraid, they're blaming, etc. There's no room in that person's life for me. No room in that person's life for me. They're all trapped in their own dynamics. But that's not God's design. So how do I experience God's love? I invite my God into my reality. Revelation chapter 3, that verse where Jesus stands at the door and knocks. The Laodicean church in Revelation chapter 3, this was their view of themselves. We have everything we want. We have need of nothing. That was their testimony of themselves. Jesus shows up and he says, I have a different view. My view is that you're poor, wretched, blind, and naked. That's not the way I see me. Well, that's the way I see you. My name is Jesus. And he says this, I'd like to do something. So he stands at the door and knocks. And this is, I teach this principle. You've heard me teach this all the time. Jesus knew something. Nobody has access to your person without your permission. Not even God. And so Jesus, who knew their needs, knew that he needed to have access to them in order to meet their needs. And he does an interesting thing. He actually invites them with permission to have a meal with him. That's called grace. Our natural tendency when we meet somebody, quote, that's screwed up, is we want to fix them.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus doesn't want to fix us. He wants to have a meal with us. That's called grace. Grace is like the woman taken in adultery. There's no condemnation in grace. Sin management believes that condemnation will actually cause your behavior to improve. No, it won't. It'll just cause your person to be distorted. And so that in this reality of, oh my gosh, what we're into right now, Robbie, into this reality of living into who God says I am, it's always for the benefit of others. You see, Robbie, God, as Christians, God gifted us for each other. The purpose that you have gifts is for the benefit of others. No gift given of God is for you. It's all for me. My gifts are all for you. My love is all for you. So imagine, just think about influence for a minute. That's what we're talking about today. But if we didn't go any further today, and we probably won't, we can do another time. Just these two dynamics. Think of the power of my influence when I'm still seeing myself through the lens of my shame. Think of the power of my influence when I'm seeing myself through the lens of how God sees me, realizing that he actually gifted me so that I would have an influence in your life. Wow. We've lost in church today in America. There is almost no awareness of the profound significance of the gifts of God for each other.
Yeah.
I have a quick personal lesson. Early on in our ministry, when, oh my gosh, it was the hippie thing. We were just, that's another story, and I still am amazed. But I realized that I was a CPA and I wasn't a preacher, and yet now I am preaching on Sunday morning. And there was a woman in our ministry, Peggy, and Peggy was, to me, the personification of mercy. And I said to Peggy one day, Peggy, would you be willing to meet with me? And she said, me? Yeah, would you be willing to meet with me? What would we do? I said, I need you to critique my messages. I need you to help me understand how I'm affecting my audience. Honestly, she looked at me like, you're crazy. I said, no, I really need help. And we met on Monday. She was so critical of my message, we had to meet on Wednesday. It was just, I couldn't take it that quick. But I'm using that as an example because she was a woman full of mercy, Robbie, who taught me how to read the effect of my message. It was an amazing gift to me. It changed my ministry forever. That's what I mean by leaning into the intention of God for each other, gifted of God for each other, loving each other. For what reason? God knew something. He knows lots of things, but he knew something. Robbie, I don't do well when I'm alone.
Yeah.
I don't do well when I'm alone. I actually need you. Nobody does well when they're alone. Because of our shame, we never get ourselves right. I need someone who loves me in spite of the way I see me. I need somebody whose intention is to build me up in spite of my view of me. Someone who can lead me into understanding the profound significance of the way God sees me.
I'm thinking of how dynamic this is as of about 12 hours or 18 hours ago, yesterday afternoon. I'm thinking about in a span of, the day. I had a great time in the morning with God, and I just, I deeply grateful of the truths that he has made me new, that I am one with him, and out of that abiding Christ in me, I get to go about my day. And then fast forward a few hours, we had a dynamic team meeting where we were expressing our expectations to each other, and they were different. And in doing that, I was a little frustrated. And then Um, and then I was showing a project that we've spent a lot of time working on. And I kind of conceded something as a leader because I want to trust the convictions and leanings of others. And I shared it with somebody, and their first reaction was about that thing that I didn't like about it. And so it triggered in me of like the fear of I messed it up. And then I
Exactly.
immediately went to blaming that other person on my team in my head, and all this happened in a span of 20 seconds of reactivity, and then I was less present with my kids the next 10 minutes at home because this was at home, and I was like, what do and I can see this conversation, the trickle in 20 seconds from I forgot truth. I felt something that triggered a lie of shame, led to fear. And I, knowing these truths, and and I know we teach these truths. And so quickly I went back to this shame. I messed up. I didn't steward this role well. Therefore, I made a mistake. So I'm afraid. And then I'm going to start blaming somebody on my team. And this is an hour after I wrapped up my team meeting and had the other expectations. And then I started influencing my children indirectly by not being present, not being about them, because I was preoccupied with my fear and blame going on in my head. So the words you're saying, I'm like, oh yeah, I felt that yesterday. I'm not able to be about others because I was too preoccupied
Right.
with those fear and blame that I was stuck in. So what is if you were in that room with me and I said, Bill, this is what's going on right now, what are you encouraging me to do in that moment in my house yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, thank you. Heavy stuff, but real. What I would say is, Robbie, boy, it's so good you caught it. Man, you caught it. That's really, really good. You saw now the reality that you were triggered. Now, the key is, what do I do with being triggered? What do I do with being triggered? And so my answer would be this. There were people engaged with you. Have the courage to tell them what you experienced for their benefit and yours. Don't make this a personal thing. What do I have to do about this? No, other people were involved. What a lesson for life. When Robbie, do you and I get a chance to help other people know we still get triggered? And when we get triggered, we still do these things. And what would be the benefit in telling? The benefit of telling is this. You're able then to say, what are we going to do about this? Invite them into the solution. It'll change the dynamic of your team. It just will, in a positive way, and it should. And the same thing is true with my wife, Grace, and I. When I'm triggered, I can ignore her. I can feel bad that I did something wrong, or I can invite her into what I've experienced. And sometimes she's so precious, this lady. And she'll look at me and she said, "What's wrong with you now?"
I love it.
It's like she's saying, Bill, is this never going to go away? And I will say, the beauty of it is, like I just said to my friend Robbie, you caught it, Robbie. That's the expression of your maturing. You know the difference. You know the difference. What a miracle. Do you understand? There are thousands of people who could have had your experience yesterday and never caught it. It's their normal. What's helping me now all these many years is how quickly I'm catching. And I got triggered. It used to be 18 hours in a non-teasing way. And in reality, the closer we come to it, and the quicker I can engage the people that were there when I experienced it into my reality, the healthier we become.
Let it be so, God. And I think that is we are influencing everybody we interact with. And that is today the effect, we will have effect on others. And
Absolutely.
positive, negative, neutral. That is the way the kingdom works. And so, and 100% of us listening will be triggered with something today. So whether we're aware of it or not, our hope, my hope for everybody listening is that when we're triggered today, when we feel something, fear, blame, that we want to hide, just that we feel anxiety, we feel in our shoulders, our emotions, wherever, that we catch it and go, okay, I'm feeling this. And we have the courage to invite somebody in, not in the blame, but to go, hey, I'm just feeling, I just want to invite you into my reality. And with others and with God, to go, God, I'm feeling this way. What do you think about it? What do you want me to know about this? We can do that. That's my hope and my prayer for everybody listening to this today, that we can do that. And in turn, we are less self-protective, and it's less about us, and therefore it's more about others, which is the litmus of our influence, is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely, my brother. Thank you, Robbie. This has been so great. You know what? We got as far as the first point. So
let's go.
So we've got some more to do in the future. Look forward to it.
Let's do it. I will consider that commitment, and let's make it happen. I love you. I miss you. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, my brother. Bless you. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.